Well, I'm excited this week to have Amy Marella here on the Flower Podcast. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here too.
Yeah, well, we met through Holly Chapel on Clubhouse,
Yes,
and we
love her
have
so much.
yeah, she's so great. And it was so funny while we were on Clubhouse. I don't know if I shared this with you or not, but she's texting me, "You need to have her on your podcast." And so
She's so good like that.
I
She's always
know.
connecting everybody. She's the best.
So I'm really glad, and it's been kind of fun because while I'm here in LA, I got to see your shop and stop by there, and that was interesting just to kind of see how everybody working and doing their thing. And
Yeah, and I think it's great to see people's faces because it gives you a perspective of kind of like, okay, I see what they do, and I see everyone's so different. We all have unique environments.
yeah. Well, and then and you've create the environment to produce what you do, so that's so amazing. Well, okay, so we've got to start at the beginning and find out how you ended up in the world of flowers.
Very, very a good start. Definitely unique and different. I started off in the music business,
Okay.
and
I've never heard that before.
I know. It's so random. I wasn't this kid that was like, I love flowers my whole life. I didn't have like, my parents weren't like gardeners that were, I'm not like Holly. I didn't come from like the world of, I wasn't birthed out of flowers. Yeah. I was in the music business in college, and I, spent a few years in the music industry, and it wasn't really my passion. But I did it. It was super fun, obviously, when you're in your 20s. And I started making flower arrangements on the side in my apartment while I was in the music business. And I did what's called artist development. So I would go on the road with bands. So my hours were a little bit weird. So I was able to like go to the flower market in the morning and get stuff and make stuff in my apartment. And, and then I could go into the office whenever I needed to. So I would start making flowers, and all of my friends in the music industry said, well, will you make this? Will you make that? And at the time I worked for Universal Music Group, and they were like, you can start doing the flowers in the lobby. And I was like, okay, this is great. Super fun. And a couple months later, my apartment was filled with flowers, and I, at the time, lived with my boyfriend, who is now my husband. And our kitchen was no longer a kitchen. And the apartment was 60 degrees because, I had to keep all the flowers cool at all times. And there was no kitchen to, use for your food. And my boyfriend then, his name's Greg, he said, you need to make a decision, but we cannot do this in the apartment anymore. So either go back to the music business or go into the flower business, but it's not in this apartment. So I said, I'm just going to try it. I'll try it. And I opened up like a little studio in this 1926 cottage. I'd never worked in the flower shop before, so I really did not know what I was doing at all, financially or anything. Like literally, I had no clue. And I opened up the Hidden Garden. My girlfriends named it because I was hidden in my apartment. So that's why we called it the Hidden Garden. And I just started making flowers, and all my friends in the business were like, we'll just buy from Amy. We'll just buy from Amy. And then before you know it, I just started learning different things about the business. And then I started meeting different people and networking. And then it just, 22 years later, here we are.
Amazing. So, okay. So you said you just started doing flowers, but why did you pick flowers? Like what was it that drew you to that? I mean, did you just get in? Yeah.
You know what? They make people happy. That was why.
There you go.
It is my, like me as I am a person that always looks to try and make people happy in every situation. Like the worst thing can happen, I'm like, okay, how can we fix this? And so flowers were just like a happy source to me.
Sure.
Like I said, music was fun, but I wasn't happy. But when I did flowers and I brought people flowers and they were so happy to get them, I was like, oh my God, this is so great. I love making people happy. So that was really what it was. And then I loved the flower. I loved flowers. I loved going to the flower market. I had a good sense of color and what went well together. So I just kept teaching myself. And it was really trial and error. And then I would bring in people over the years that if I was not good at something, I was like, let's just hire someone that's good at that. And that kind of is how I, turned it into a, multi 7-figure business. Was just hiring people that if I'm not good at something, there's someone that's good at it. Let's bring them in and figure this out. So that's how I learned other design skills, just because there were certain things, I didn't know for weddings how to make a huppah.
Right.
So I had a lead designer, and I was like, explain this whole HIPAA thing to me, and then we would work through it, so that was kind of my happiness was the source. And then bringing people in behind me that could either teach me the skills or could support, what I didn't have already in my tool belt.
Wow. And what you've accomplished since then in 22 years. And I just think back, people today especially don't realize 22 years ago there wasn't a YouTube, there wasn't social media.
Oh no, I would buy things and bring them home and take them apart. I was like, okay, how do all these flowers like fit in this vase? This is crazy. And I would literally buy it and just rip it apart. And I was like, okay, start from scratch. I did take one flower course. I will say that.
Okay.
I did take one flower course at Santa Monica City College because I wanted to understand, like, I didn't know how to use a knife. I didn't know, I literally the basic things I really didn't know. I was just teaching myself. So I went to this course. I did not like the flower selection that was at the course, but I thought as long as I understood the basics, I could use my, design aesthetics, to any arrangement if I knew the basic foundations. And that was kind of my one thing I did do. I think it might've been 4 weeks long. It was like really short. And then I took it from there and just created it into my own space. But yeah, that was how I learned, was just trial and error.
So how would you describe your aesthetic? Like, what is it that when I hear you say these flowers, like they weren't your taste, now I'm curious, what is your taste? Like what?
I'm very gardeny. Like I personally tend to like, roses and hydrangea and lilac and viburnum. And like, that's kind of who I am as a person. But I guess I would use the word high-end flowers. Like we import a lot of flowers. Like I love everything that comes from Holland, but I love everything from our local growers in California too. So I can't say only imports, but I think that design aesthetically for me is gardeny, but we've evolved as a company to be able to do modern, anything. Like, again, it goes back to, I might not be a modern designer as far as like, sleek and stylized modern arrangements, but we have designers that do that. So As long as we give them the right flowers to make something, they can create that.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned local flowers too, because having now been to the LA market, and
isn't it pretty?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
It's crazy.
So I'm like, I don't even know how I'm supposed to function outside of LA flower world anymore, because it totally taints you. So
it definitely, and that's how I learned. So it's like, back then it was 3 city blocks of flowers. It was crazy. So when people would say like, oh, I don't have that, I'm like, what do you mean you don't have that? You just like go to the flower market and pick it up. It's right there, so yeah, it's crazy how much is there.
And if there's not a plan A, there's A through Z there. So,
you'll figure it out. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Something will work.
So how does that work? This might be kind of a silly question, but we have so many designers and things that really try to focus on American grown or locally grown. Obviously here with that resource, the market, I can't imagine that you don't have a tremendous, ability to source local product. Is that something you try to do, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's interesting that at the LA market, and I'm going to say this pre-COVID because it's definitely different than right now, but at the LA market, Monday, Wednesday, Friday was our big market days where things would come in. On Wednesdays and Fridays, our local growers, and that would be people that were, a little bit more up north from the LA market and a little bit down south from the LA market, they would bring all of their local product in. So that it literally could be dahlias, lisianthus, sweet peas, sunflowers, hydrangea, delphinium, like all locally grown, but it's small batches because, they're local farmers. They don't have huge farms. And we would buy all of that product because he just cut it yesterday and just brought it in today. It was amazing. Some of those guys aren't there anymore, which is sad. Yeah. So the LA market housed a lot of those local growers. And so we would buy all that local product from them because it was so great, to just get that really, really fresh California grown product. But then the LA market has, the imports that we get aren't equally as insane. So
Yes.
It's kind of hard to, it's kind of hard to like pick and choose because you're just like, it's all just so pretty, you know?
Right. Well, and I know having, been in the Atlanta area for most of my wholesale career, um, I know when people came to Atlanta, they always said that what we had was the closest thing to a market like that there is in Atlanta. But at the same time, now that I've actually been to it, I'm like, yeah, not so much. So anyway.
I know it's definitely different. I've been to the New York market, which is different than the LA market.
Yes.
But they get a lot of the, the Holland imports, which is all beautiful too. But that has a different product all in of itself as well. So all the markets are a little bit different, but LA is definitely kind of cream of the crop. It's hard to.
Yeah, it's hard to beat that.
Yeah, it is.
Well, one of the things that was mentioned when we were having a conversation in that clubhouse room was that in your business, and we've talked about this with other guests before, but they've not been retailers.
Okay.
And so is this idea of having multiple income streams and being diversified. I feel like everything I've learned about you, everything I have researched, everything, I mean, I'm like, you have really got that nut cracked. And so I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what question to ask because,
or how we got there, maybe. Because that might be the path, is how I even got to that place. Because again, we'll go back to the beginning. I hadn't worked in a flower shop,
right?
So I really had to like figure out, what am I doing? So when I first started, I was doing daily orders. That was the plan. I was going to make people happy with happy birthday, I love you, anniversary. That's really all I knew.
And they're just calling you because there's not even a website at that point, right?
No, there was not. I didn't really have any. I didn't have anything. Yeah. So, I mean, my dad was my delivery driver, and there's a guy named Juan that still works for me today. He was my like kind of everything person. He would do just whatever, So I really had nothing but just me, my dad, and Juan. That was it. And I was making daily flower arrangements, and then it turned into, you should do weddings. And I was like, okay, what happens at weddings? Like, what do I want to do there? And I think I grew up, I didn't go to big weddings when I was younger. I didn't see that, so I didn't really have a sense of what that meant. So then I started meeting people in the wedding business. So then we added this wedding bucket into our business. So now we had daily flowers, and then we had wedding flowers. Then it was, well, do you do like social things? Like you could do an engagement party or a bridal shower, a baby shower. I was like, oh yeah, we could do that too. So then we added that bucket into our world. Then a few years later, it started to become like corporate and like corporate functions and, bigger companies. Like, we started doing stuff for the NFL, and we started bringing in bigger companies and doing corporate jobs. And I was like, this is a really great, piece of the pie too, because this was not non-emotional. Weddings were like emotions, time, lots of meetings, lots of emails. Corporate was like, I have a job. It's in 2 weeks. This is the colors. This is the budget. Can you be there? Yes. Great. We're done. So that was another revenue stream. Then we started with, I want to say it could have been like 10 years into business. Then we started getting into the hotel world and doing lobbies and being the in-house florist for a bunch of different hotels in LA. And our first hotel was Beverly Hills Hotel. And it took me a few years to get that account. And then we got Hotel Bel Air. Then we got Four Seasons Westlake. Then we got Waldorf Astoria. We've since backed out of Four Seasons Westlake, but we became kind of a hotel florist to some people. So we really created 4 different buckets of our business over the years. That at any given point, if one of those buckets went down, wedding season wasn't really in, but corporate was really picking up. Or if, daily orders were kind of on a slump because people were in summer vacations, well, weddings were picking up. So those buckets always kind of helped move each other around and kind of even the playing field, so to speak. So we were never just reliant on, I just do weddings. So I'm going to be in big trouble in, February, March, because there's no weddings. So it kind of always moved and had these ebbs and flows, which was really great. And then over COVID, everything went down. And then weddings went away, corporate went away, hotels went away. And we had just our daily business. So then we started ramping that up. And then I started an online education portion of like a DIY. And so we've started picking that up. So now we kind of have 5 buckets of revenue. And so everything, kind of just works with each other. And if something's down, another one picks it up. So that's kind of how I built the business, not with any specific intention, just over the years, I've been very thoughtful about, okay, well, if we're doing that, then we could do this too. And it's worked. Yeah. But everything's just flowers. I don't do rentals. I don't want to plan. I don't want to be a coordinator or anything like that. It's just all about flowers.
Wow. Well, I know when I was on your website too, I noticed, it's funny you mentioned buckets, but there's buckets on your website.
Yes. Yeah. So we started.
I thought was intriguing. Yeah.
It was, it started when COVID started. So I'm in LA. So we were really, there was a lot of lockdown, so to speak, I guess.
You were hit hard. Yeah.
Yeah. So I still wanted to have flowers in my life. I have flowers in my home every day. I'm literally one of those florists that do have vases of flowers throughout the house. So I would still order flowers from our growers. One, because I wanted to support them. A lot of the people that I bought flowers from, they were as just much trouble as I was. And so I would order flowers and have them just shipped to the house. And then I would make flower arrangements at home just for fun. And then my neighbors were like, why are you making flowers? Like, what are you making flowers for? And I said, oh, just for myself, and they said, well, can we come over and make flowers? And I was like, yeah, we can make flowers in the backyard. And so they would come over, and these are just a couple of my girlfriends. They were in my little pod, our COVID pod. And then their friends would say, wait, where are you getting these flowers from? And how are you guys making flowers? And then the word spread throughout our neighborhood of, we make these flowers on Thursdays. Amy gets these flowers. And so I created what I called Bucket of Blooms, and I would have the buckets. Juan still worked for me during COVID, and I would have the buckets, and he'd bring all the flowers, and we'd separate all the flowers in the bucket, and we'd create a recipe for everyone. And then they would drive through the cul-de-sac that I live in, and they would pick up their bucket. It would have their name on it, and they would drive home. And then we would all get on Zoom, and we would all make flowers together, and we'd make a flower arrangement. So that turned into our Bucket of Blooms program. And then as COVID, things started opening up, everyone was like, are you still going to do the buckets? And I thought, I was thinking that was like a COVID thing, but I guess we could still do the buckets. And so that turned into me recording the Bucket of Blooms videos every week. So I'll go in and, record the video, and then we send out the bucket on Thursdays. Actually today in this recording, there's a bucket going out to people, and they get the video, and then they can make the flowers at home. And then we now take those videos, and we created what we call Bloom Academy, which is like an online source. So anyone in the United States could be a Bloom Academy member, and they can get all the tutorials and make flowers at home.
Yeah, they can source the flowers themselves in their local area. And so you're not shipping flowers out yet.
No, I do not want to ship flowers. That is a revenue stream I'm not interested in. I can promise you that. Yeah. That's a tough one. I hats off to all my friends that do that. That's a tough one for me. Yeah. So
and dealing with FedEx and all that. Yeah.
Bucket of Blooms in LA is great. You can get your buckets if you live in LA, and we will send them to you, and you can make the flowers with us and that. But if you're not in LA, then you could just sign up for Bloom Academy, and be a member there and get as many video tutorials as you want.
Well, I am fascinated with the idea of hotels and corporate work because, it's so funny. What you've described is exactly a model that I kind of had as well. When I was in wholesale, I would see salespeople. I was in sales. I did buying and everything, but that was my main function. And I would see salespeople that would be all weddings. And of course, when it wasn't wedding season, they would be hurting, or they'd have all flower shops, and there'd be summers where they're hurting. Well, I was like, I'm going to have a diversified client base. And so I wanted to have flower shops and weddings and people who just did, now movies and things, or do hotels and events and things. And so that was sort of my approach as well. And I'm intrigued by a couple of these areas because I think a lot of times, I mean, yes, the competition for like a hotel, for example, is pretty fierce. And a lot of times I know there'd be at least three people competing for any bid when
Yes.
they're setting out for contract, at least three. I mean, it could be more.
Yeah, no, for sure. We're in the middle of one right now for a new hotel that's opening up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of hard. And then usually their budgets aren't really.
Super high. Yeah, no, you have to make it up in other places. It's kind of, I look at it a couple ways. I look at it as getting the hotel account is the first challenge, right? But you have to be like for me, we know how to run a hotel account. Like
Okay.
we're readily available. Our guys know exactly the ins and outs of the hotel properties, how if the concierge needs something, if housekeeping needs something, what's going to happen in the loading dock. Like there's zero confusion on our part. So the hotel staff feels like we're just part of their team. And that's a big bonus to them because they're not worried about what we're going to do. They're like, oh no, they got this. This is like, I'm calling them because this is a done deal after I hang up the phone with Hidden Garden. So that's a big part of it. The relationship just with the hotel staff itself is a big part of it. And then a big part of it would just be executing the orders that come in. So can we get the flowers? Can we get them there fast enough? Things like that. That's a whole another avenue.
Yeah.
And then as far as budgeting goes for us, we might not be making, let's just say, for example, the lobby focal arrangement. We're not making a killing on the lobby focal arrangement, but it's also a marketing tool. So if we have a really beautiful lobby focal piece and people walk into the hotel and they're like, that is so beautiful. And then I say to the concierge, oh, where did that come from? And they say, oh, it came from the Hidden Garden. Oh, okay, good to know. And then we'll get a phone call and says, I was in the hotel lobby and I saw this beautiful flower arrangement and I needed to order flowers for my mom. Or I have a baby shower, or whatever it is. So that is kind of like, we use that as a marketing tool, not a revenue generator. As far as the bill itself, it's a revenue generator for marketing.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that because a lot of times I know I had three customers that did hotels. And at that point, that was always the battle. They're like, is it worth doing a hotel? And because the lobby was like, it was almost barely break even.
Right.
You might make a tiny bit, but it was really more break even. And then you were hoping to get the concierge, you were hoping to get the add-ons later. But I love the idea that you're treating it like a PR situation.
Yeah. And I would say even there's one hotel, I won't mention it, that we stopped working there long ago because we weren't getting revenue from them. So it has to go hand in hand. So our relationships with our hotel are very, very hand in hand. Like we do this, you do that. Like we work together so that we are both winning.
Right.
That's the idea. Now, if I was just a hotel florist, it wouldn't work because I wouldn't be making enough money just doing the hotel lobby. So I really look at it as it is my marketing to do some of the things in the hotel. Sometimes we'll do things that, I'm like, oh, let's just throw something over there because it will look better. It's not in their budget, but let's do it. It makes us look good too. So it kind of depends. Sometimes I can't do it. Sometimes I'm like, no, that's out. We're not doing that. But I do look at it. It is a marketing tool. And sometimes I think you do have to look at the things that you do. It can't always be about what am I getting back for that money wise. Sometimes it's like, what am I going to get back, like marketing wise, relationship wise, like. Sometimes those are the marketing dollars that you need to spend right there. And what better way than to put your work out there,
Yeah, absolutely. So. I mean, and especially if they're in essence paying for that, at least, it's you're breaking even and it's tremendous or more, but it's a tremendous marketing tool. Like you said,
and you can't do it for everything. You just have to pick and choose when it makes sense. And, that's everyone's choice, so it just depends, but we're very good about making it work for us.
Sure.
I like the way it works.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Do you, with your hotel accounts, are they, this is terminology I learned. So whether it's the same here, I don't know, but are they like 7-day sets or do you replace the flowers twice a week or how does that work?
So we actually, for our hotel accounts, and this is our philosophy. If something's sitting in the lobby, if something's sitting anywhere, if it's sitting in a front desk at an office, I don't want dead flowers anywhere.
Right.
So just because you bought something on Monday, if it looks dead by Friday and my name's all over it, I'm embarrassed. I don't want that to happen. So for our hotel accounts, we go to our hotels literally every single morning and refresh the flowers. And that might seem like a lot of work to some people, but guess what? There's never a dead bloom in the lobby. That's not happening, because I don't want to walk into a meeting at the hotel on a Tuesday and say, oh my gosh, there's like 5 dead flowers sitting here. It's like embarrassing, So we literally go every single morning to our hotel properties and refresh flowers. And it actually is really easy, because we've been going every single morning. So it's not like there's a bunch of things that need to be replaced.
Right.
And then we set all our accounts up so that they're different installation days, so that we're not doing everyone on one day, so there's a rotation.
Plus, I just think if you're in this hotel every day, which some people might be like cringing at, but you're also making those connections with the concierge, with the hotel staff. They're seeing you. It's
a relationship.
Yeah. And that's huge. That is huge.
Yeah, it's a big part of it. And then they trust us. And then we become, again, like I said, part of their team. And so then they are going to call us for things because they believe, oh, well, they're on our team. We're together. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, being in LA, I'm sure that doing hotel work has also brought you some high profile customers, just to put it delicately.
Yes. Yeah, no, there's definitely, whether there's celebrities or just very wealthy people. Yeah, there is definitely high profile that comes with it. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I'm curious, just because being in Atlanta, obviously in Atlanta now, we're producing so many movies and televisions, it's crazy how much that industry has grown in Georgia. I know that in different parts of the country, it may be different, but as far as like reaching out to these high profile clients, is there a trick, or is it have there been people that I hate to use the word solicited because it always sounds so negative, but approached, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, usually in LA, we have a lot of planners, or planners or coordinators, however you want to phrase them. And a lot of them have relationships that then end up introducing us to those people. And then we build relationships that way. So, we have some planners that live and die by their NDAs, and, they're just working with, whether they're very wealthy or they're famous, and they do all of their work, and we do all of their flowers for them, and that's great. And I'm all good with that kind of business all day long. I think it's great. And then we have some people that just because they were in a hotel and someone wanted to send, so-and-so famous person flowers, the concierge, we send it, and then our name gets connected to that person, and then they end up calling us again, So sometimes it's just like, that 7 degrees of separation, or you see someone's name 7 times. It's just kind of like, I saw their name and I saw it again and I saw it again and I saw it again. And that sometimes that clicks. It'll be an assistant a lot of times, those are always great people to reach out to if you connect with certain assistants. Because at the end of the day, let's be honest, it's not like Will Smith is calling me and saying, hey, Amy, I'd love for you to order flowers, but his assistant, it will,
Right.
So, I mean, that's different, so those are the people that I think if you're trying to connect, those are the people you really want to connect to, those are the people that are doing the work. So, right. And we try and treat, I mean, that's another part of business too, is treat everyone the same.
Thank you.
I mean, whether it's the famous person, it's the assistant, it's the guy at valet, it's the guy at concierge, treat them all the same. You just never know where they're going to land, and they will respect and appreciate that so much more. So,
well, I'm so thrilled to hear you say that, because I would have clients that would come up to me and say, I know that I'm just a little, like, they knew I helped some big customers.
Right.
And so they would come to me and they'd say, I know I'm just this little nobody. And I'm like, I treat everybody the same.
One
It's
day you
like,
might be a big somebody.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're so right. You never know where that person's going to end up or whatever. And I'm like and I've said this on the podcast 1,000 times. Well, maybe not 1,000, but close. Um, but our industry is the biggest industry with the smallest community, and it's just there's too many bridges, and it's just life is too short. Why
Yeah, you
not be
just
nice?
never, yeah, you never know. And even I mean, we get clients, I will have people say, I know you don't want this. It's just like this little da da da. I'm like, no, I want it. Bring it. Like, I'll tell you if I can't do it. I don't, but you don't need to make that decision for me. Let me tell you if it works or not,
I love
because
that.
sometimes that little job turns into something big, or it turns into, oh, it's just a little baby shower, two table pieces. But guess what? Then it turns into the sister's wedding later. It turns into the, it's relationship building. And that's, I mean, I could go back to our different revenue streams. Our wedding revenue stream, for example, is only 25% of our business. I don't even branch out past that, because really the goal is to take all of those wedding clients and turn them into our daily orders, turn them into our special social functions, turn them into that bride happens to work at this company and she has this corporate party. And now we're going to do that because we created that relationship with her as a wedding client. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it is all about your relationships, all about your networking. I mean, you can grow and grow and grow just based on that. But if every time you do a wedding and you drop everyone like a hot potato when they're done, you just missed out. So.
And that's amazing, because even a big city like Los Angeles, you just think, there's so many people here. There's got to be so much business here. But it still boils down to relationships. I mean, you can't get away from it.
You can't. And I know that you've heard people say all the time, it's much cheaper to retain your clients than go out and get new clients. So why not keep the clients that you have and build the relationships with them? And then they'll keep bringing you back business or bring you back new clients than going out every time and having to start over.
Right.
So relationship building is key, I think, in our growth, at least.
Well, I feel like it. And when you have customers that love your work and then they send your work as gifts or thank yous or to other people and broaden your reach and your network, I think it just, I don't know. It's a win-win-win at that point.
And I don't know that it's, I mean, if you think about flowers in general, they're beautiful. Like no one's sending like, oh, those are ugly flowers. Like everyone loves flowers. They're all beautiful, but it's not just the flower arrangement that we're sending. It's the experience that we're sending. It's the whole process that we're sending to them. So, sometimes someone will say, well, I can get this from this person, or, well, this will be a good example. I can get, we have Trader Joe's here. Do you have Trader Joe's? Okay. Yeah. So I can get an orchid from Trader Joe's for $20. 100% you can get an orchid from Trader Joe's for $20. Well, why is your orchid $120? Well, it's not just our orchid. It was, the conversation you just had with me. It's me figuring out like what do you want in this pot? Do you want it with this glass rod? Do you want it with this bamboo rod? What would you like the note to say? Let me type that for you. Let us get it delivered designed, delivered, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's all about the whole process of what we provide, not just about the product. So the orchid's pretty at Trader Joe's and the orchid's pretty at the Hidden Garden, but it was the whole process is what what you're going after, right? And that's why you go to certain companies to buy things. It's that relationship that you created with the client and the process and the whole experience that you're giving them.
That's a great example, and I'm glad that you shared that, because I know that people hear that all the time. I mean, whether it's flowers or orchids or whatever it is, I mean, people hear that all the time, and it's that service that you provide, that experience. I love that. Well, if weddings and events is 25% of your business, is that the biggest single bucket in your arsenal, or what is the biggest bucket?
They're equally divided, actually. Daily orders, 25%. Yeah. Weddings, 25%. Social functions, 25, and then hotel corporate, 25. We have it really well divvied up. And we work really hard to make sure that those numbers kind of stay in that pattern. Because again, I don't want one to take a complete dive. Like, what if weddings were 50% of my business and they and they took a dive, or that time of year, then I'm in trouble. I don't want to be in that position. So I want it to always kind of have a good ebb and flow. So that's the reason why we keep it that way.
Well, I mentioned this before we started recording, and I want to go here maybe right now. Some of our listeners recently have asked some questions regarding guarantees, and how you approach that, like for your daily work, because there's a lot of people who want to use maybe higher end flowers that don't have the same shelf life, or locally grown flowers like a dahlia, for example, which may not have the same shelf life. So how do you approach guarantees, or do you even have a certain number of days, or how do you structure that if you do?
So if we send out an arrangement that we know, like, let's say I'm going to send out just an arrangement that's just all tulips. Like when that person orders that arrangement, we'll mention to them, just so you know, this isn't like the longest lasting arrangement that you're sending out. Just want to be clear. And then we also send out a little care card inside, like, just don't forget to add water, don't keep it in the heat, like all the basic things, just in case the person forgets to do that. And then if someone calls us after 2 days, 3 days and says the flowers are dead, we always say, no problem, we'll send you a new one. We don't even fight it. It's not worth it. We will send a brand new arrangement out and just call it a day. We don't get that many of those phone calls because we really will just say, no problem, we'll send out a new one. And if someone is calling just to get a free arrangement, that's on their conscience, I guess. I'm not going to worry about it. But we, for the most part, say the arrangements will last you up to 5 days. And we kind of stand behind that, but we don't say absolutely 100% guarantee. We'll ask questions, oh, did you make sure you add water? And sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, you're right, there's no water in here, so we just have a conversation about that. But most people, when you say no problem, they back off immediately, because there's nothing worse than the person coming at you, screaming at you on the phone, and you're like, okay, hold on, it's just flowers, we can fix it. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Well, it's a real issue for some people, and I feel like, I'll never forget this. Okay, so I'm sure there's something here, I know there is in Las Vegas, but in Atlanta we have the gift show, and so
yeah, I've been to that.
Yeah, so
I love that.
It's huge. So we had one customer one time, and they bought, I don't know, $1,000 worth of flowers, and they took back their flowers to the mart and didn't process anything. They literally put it in water, but they didn't recut anything. They didn't do anything to it. And of course, their flowers
died.
Well, first of all, to their credit, the mart is like a sauna. With all the lights and everything in there, it's just really hot.
Right.
But yeah, pretty much after 24 or 36 hours, everything died. And, when you're in the wholesale end of it, you expect your customers, if you're in our place of business buying flowers, you expect them to know some basics, like you need to
got to process them fresh cut and put them in water. Yeah.
But when you're dealing with retail, I know that it can be a wide gamut of experience that, from your customer standpoint. I think it's really great that you do let people know, though, that, okay, tulips aren't the longest lasting flower, or
whatever it is that they're picking might not be. And we try and buy things that we know aren't going to, of course we put tulips in tons of our arrangements, dahlias, and seasonally we put things in there. But when we design the flowers, we put, like I said, there's a little daily care card in there. And, we try and remind in multiple ways, don't forget to add water. That's usually the biggest culprit, is they forget to even add fresh water to their arrangement. Right. So we try and ask those questions to prompt them, and they'll go, oh yeah, I forgot about that, Yeah. Or you get an orchid plant where they say all the blooms died. Well, you and I both know if all the blooms die at one time, there's just a couple things that happened. It was temperature and it was water. So which one is it? It's one or the other, but it's not, I gave you a bad orchid.
Yeah, you're right.
Because that's not how they die. So, and sometimes, we'll have people that say, nope, it's in indirect sunlight. And I gave it the proper amount of water. And at that point, you're like, I'm not going to continue to argue. I obviously know it's one of those two things because that's not how orchids die. So, yeah. So we try and believe them the best you can. And there's many, many times where we're like, oh gosh, we know that they're not telling us the truth, but good customer service. Let's just chalk it up to get you a new one. Yeah.
Well, I was wondering with COVID and having to shut down, and your staffing, how are things on the other side, on this side of COVID now? Are things getting back to normal? How are things flowing for you?
Yeah, we're just starting to get a little crazy in LA. We're definitely in like the crazy meeting mode, that's for sure. So we kept some people on full time just to kind of keep us going, but we did have 30 full-time employees. So it was a kind of a big hit to all of a sudden say, okay, we got to let everybody go, which was sad. And it was like, I mean, they're all like family, so it was like what the heck, how this is crazy. And we were going 1,000,000 miles a minute to zero. So that was crazy. But now we're just in the process of, in LA, at least, all these weddings are able to come back and, we can have more people in one space at one time. And I think June 15th, they're saying we can have, all these things are opening up. I mean, who knows what will ultimately happen, but, but so now we're just kind of ramping back up, fast and furious. And, people are coming back to work. Some people are not going back to work, and that's their choices. But yeah, we're just starting to get going again. But I think everyone's appreciates having a job again, which is nice. And we appreciate all of our team that's back and working with us. So it's good. But it definitely was different to like go from 30 people to 5 people, that was like, oh my gosh, I feel like this was literally, 18 years ago. This is crazy.
Oh yeah. Cause it's like starting all over again, really.
Yeah. But then it was kind of in a weird way. I'm always a glasses half full person, or as my husband will call me, the defender of the universe. Like I always look at the bright side of every single situation, no matter what it is. Even when they're terrible, I'm always like, well, but the nice thing about it for me, just having, had built such a huge company, it was to be able to take a step back this year and kind of reevaluate how the company's running and what can we change to make it better. And, do we want to go that fast? Do we want to do that much? Do we want to, change this up to make it a little bit more personal, a little bit, more special? Because we were kind of in that hamster wheel phase of just going, and you didn't have time to breathe. The perishable business is so hard, so hard. So it was nice to kind of reevaluate how we want to do things moving forward. And I feel really good about that.
Yeah, because if there's a time to reinvent yourself, this is the time. I mean, not that you're doing that, but I'm just saying, but to look at each area.
Processes. Yeah. Because I think we all got to a point where we were just doing so much that you didn't even really get to stop. I mean, I know I learned a lot of stuff in during COVID this year, just about a lot of online marketing stuff that I couldn't even believe. I didn't know how all of that worked. Like, I was like, was I under a rock? Like, how did I get this far along? And it was fun to kind of re-educate, I guess, in a way. It was a good experience. I enjoyed learning, and now I have to take those things that I've learned and implement them into the new hidden garden after COVID times.
Yes, I'm sure we need to have some kind of a code for AC after COVID or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I there's a couple things I'm thinking about. One is I noticed on your website you're a part of Bloom Nation. I know that there seems to be a trend with a lot of people going away from these order sites. How do you feel about that?
I get that. Bloom Nation, we use, it's funny because I know we're bigger than a lot of the companies that are on the Bloom Nation site. So we use it as our shopping cart, portion of our website. And then I know other people use it as their marketing tool for their website. So I think everyone kind of utilizes it in a different way. So for me, it works as for our shopping cart. Like that is how we get our orders online and stuff like that, which is great. And they're very good at the way everything flows and is great. But I know a lot of smaller shops use it as their POS. They use it, so we all use it a little bit differently. And we're in the middle of working on our own POS system just internally for our shop. So I think everyone uses it a different way. Mm-hmm. So I might not be the perfect Bloom Nation scenario.
No, it's all good. Well, I feel like it's more, and maybe this isn't fair. And this is only out of ignorance. It's more of a technology company than it is a flower company, which is not a bad thing, because a lot of times technology is the area that a lot of shops, struggle with. Yeah.
100% agree with you. That's why I think it's great for some of these smaller shops that it works well for them because they don't have the technology. And I'm always fascinated how behind sometimes our technology is in our business. It's so interesting to me.
Yeah.
That we're missing so many elements. I'm like, how is this possible? So I think it's good for, people, if they're missing that part, there's a technology component for each part you're missing. It's just finding it, but I think Bloom Nation fills the shopping cart hole, and for other people, it could fill the marketing hole or, how to get the word out there and stuff like that. So.
Well, if you could go back and tell the younger Amy 22 years ago one thing that this is going to be my deep question here. One thing, like, you need to go do this, or you need to go learn this, or just a piece of advice that you would want to give the younger Amy starting out in the flower business, what would that be?
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of advice for the younger Amy.
Well, we've got time.
Yeah. Okay. The first bit of advice, I probably cried myself to sleep for 5 years, was probably over budgeting. Like I didn't budget properly. I didn't organize my numbers very well. So I would definitely say that is a big part of it. Making sure you know what your markups are, and understanding that. We just grew so fast. So it worked. It worked itself out, but coming up with those right formulas of your markups and having good budgets. So when you're buying product, like if I overbuy, where's that product going? Because I have to have a place for that. It can't just sit in my store, So that's a big thing, I would say, learning that. And then number 2 is being okay saying no to things. Like I felt like I'm a people pleaser. So I would say, oh yeah, absolutely, we could do that. Oh, of course we could do that. Absolutely, we could do that. And then at some point you have to go, it's okay to say, I can't do that. And it's going to be okay. They're not going to go anywhere. So giving yourself some good boundaries, because this is it's a tough business. It's perishables, it's labor, and you're trying to make people happy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's a really tough combination of things to try and, juggle all at one time. So if you give yourself a little bit of room to say no with some grace, I think people will respect that and be okay with it. And they're not going to run away. They always come back. So I've definitely, now I'm okay when I say it, and I still have trouble sometimes, I mean, even this year, my husband was like, I'm so proud of you. You said you couldn't do that. But it's, it's still hard for me, but I think that would be another bit of advice. So budgeting and learning to have boundaries.
I love that. Do you feel like, is the boundaries more personal or more business, or both?
Both, actually. When I built my company, I didn't want my company to say Amy's Garden, because I knew that I also wanted one day to just be a mom and, be with my kids when I needed to be and go to work when I needed to be. I wanted the best of both worlds. I always say, I'm a stay-at-home mom with a full-time career, because I really I love working. I love having that. And I love being a mom. And I actually think my kids think I'm a stay-at-home mom. Like, they actually think I am readily available at all times.
That's not bad.
It's not bad. Yeah. But it definitely, learning to have that balance and getting a little bit of both is, just think really important. Because I think we get to a place sometimes where your clients take over your life, and then you don't want to look back and say, I missed all these things because I just did these things for clients and work, and I missed these things for my kids. Like, I don't want to have that. I want both.
Yeah.
The best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And you can have the best of both worlds. I really think you can.
Yeah, I do too. I, to be transparent, I wasn't always the best at that myself. I was not good at setting boundaries, and there are definitely some regrets there now, but I can appreciate it, and I'm glad to talk about it, because I do think you can say it's okay to say no. And I'm really glad you shared that. I would be crazy to not ask about, because of everything you said.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things you mentioned earlier, NFL, and it's not just any NFL stuff you do, but you've done a few Super Bowls, I hear.
Yes, I know. It's kind of crazy. This was actually our first year that we didn't go, was 2021 Super Bowl. But we'll be back for 2022. Yeah, we started doing Super Bowl. I think I've done 12 Super Bowls. So our first time working with the NFL, a company that I work with called Party Planners West, they have brought us into the first Super Bowl for us, was in Arizona. And we took our crew out there, and we do what's called the tailgate party for the NFL. So it's at the stadium, and PPW organizes this whole event, and then we do all the flowers for it. It's a party for 10,000 people at the stadium. And we did our first Super Bowl, and it went really well on our end, and went really well for the NFL. Was super happy. And then they invited us back, and then back, and then back, and back, and back, and back. And now we go every year. And we just didn't go this past year because the party obviously wasn't really a party. In Florida, there was a mini version of it, I guess is the best way to say it. But yeah, so this year it's going to be in LA, which is crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Next 2022. So it'll be the first time we're actually doing the Super Bowl in our city, which will be really fun and exciting. But yeah, we've had the fortune of traveling, all over the United States for all these different Super Bowls. It's a pretty cool experience. Definitely very fun and unique. Yeah.
I just can't imagine logistics. I've been involved with some golf tournaments and supplying flowers for that. And you have all these different corporate sponsors, and you have all these different people. I can't imagine the logistics of a tailgate party for how many people?
10,000. Yeah, I know it is kind of crazy. On our end, the nice thing is, we get a plan, and then we kind of figure out what we're going to do, and we own our space. Again, going back to like your clients trusting you, or the hotel's trusting you. And, for us, it's like they trust us. So they're like, here's our plan. What do you want to do?
Nice.
And it really works well. And then we have to determine, are we flying the flowers in? Are we trucking the flowers in? Like, what is our game plan? What city are we going to? Do we need refrigerated trucks? Do we need a warehouse? Are we working in the tent on property? At the stadium, are we like, what is it that works for us? Because I will tell you, every single city is different. There could be snow, there could be rain, there could be sun, there could be wind. We've been in every single, minus I think a tornado at this point. I think we've been in everything.
Here, knock on wood.
So I know, right? So we've definitely experienced every element, for sure, in each city. So it's definitely different, and the logistics for all of them are unique, but remaining calm through all of them is very, very important, because there's always going to be a problem. Always going to be a problem.
Well, and I think when you know that too, then you're just okay. I want to back up for a second. So when you know that, does that create paranoia, or does that mean you just know it's going to happen at some time? So when it does happen, you just roll with it.
Just roll with it. Yeah. If you get me upset or nervous, or I start yelling, then everyone should be worried. Because I really don't get to that place. Like, the very few times that's ever happened, my team is like, we're in trouble. She's upset. So I'm pretty calm. I think you have to roll with it. It's perishables. You have no control. You can't control if the plane doesn't show up with the product, right? You can't control if there's a snowstorm. You can't control if there's so many things you can't control. So if it's out of your control, how can you get so upset about it? Like, you'll never be able to come to the resolution. So I always remain calm, and I'm like, okay, what are we going to do? Let's talk this through. Cause there's always a solution. At the end of the day, it's only flowers. Like, we are not, curing cancer here. It's only flowers.
I know. And it's part of me, that statement always kind of, I don't know. There's two sides to that statement. Part of it is I agree. And it gives such a perspective to what we do, but there's a part of me that hates that saying, because I'm like, I feel like it undervalues what we do a little bit. And
that's fair. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It does. But then I think at the same time, it's only flowers. Like, they're going to be pretty. It's going to work out.
Exactly.
It's not going to be, nothing bad's going to happen if you have to change a color, or, maybe to a bride it might, but nothing like bad is going to, we can adjust the design. We can, there's so many things that we can change and still make it work.
Right. No,
that's how I look
fair. At it. No, that's totally fair. And
think about if we were, I always think, I think our job's hard in this business, but like, I think, well, imagine if we owned a restaurant and we had perishables and labor and time constraints, but we could actually like make someone sick, like with bad food. Like, we can't do that with flowers.
Right.
So
that's true. Very, very true. With having so many buckets and you do so many different things, do you have your hands on everything? Do you do it all, or is it I know I know in talking to you, that's a popular question you get. So how do you answer that?
I don't do everything anymore. But I will say I've done every job in the store. So that's a rhyme. There we go. I don't do everything anymore, but I've done every job in the store. There you go.
T-shirt at least.
Yeah, exactly. I've done everybody's job since I started off, it was just me and my dad.
Sure.
And one. Yeah. But since we started off like that, I have done every single person's job. I've ordered the flowers. I've been to the flower market. I've picked up at the market. I've come back and processed. I've designed the flowers. I've answered the phones. I've done the meetings. I've cleaned the shop. I've helped deliver flowers. I've done everything, in the business as far as that goes. So now there's people that do those jobs. And I let them kind of own those spaces so that they can do those jobs really well. And then I just kind of touch on it and just say, hey, where are we at with this? Hey, where are we at with that? And most of them can respect the fact that I have done those things, and sometimes I'm at the shop and I'll start sweeping and moving buckets, and everyone's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I do like all of this still. I still want to do some of this stuff, so, or I'll start designing and, I'll get sidetracked and end up in some other place in the business. But, I still like to do all of those things and have my hands in things and ask questions. But probably not as intimately involved in every little aspect of it as far as me putting my hands on it,
Sure.
And now it's got, there's so many different revenue streams that you do have to make sure everyone's doing their job. You do have to, because it's not possible for one person to do everything. You have to count on your team. And without my team, I'd be nowhere for sure. For sure.
One last, okay, this is my last question, I promise.
Okay.
you mentioned when we were talking earlier about sort of a group of people that are in the business that you sort of have a chat group with. I'm really curious about that, because I feel like in some cities that's hard because people don't want to collaborate, or they don't want to sort of,
they feel competitive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's so interesting, because I always think that they're flowers. They're pretty. Anyone can bring us a picture and say, can you make this? Of course I can make that. Like,
sure.
We're designers. We can make anything, but we're also different. And so you're hiring different people to execute a job. Right. So you're not just, sometimes I talk about like going to buy a shirt. I can go to Target and get a t-shirt. I can go to Nordstrom and get a t-shirt. I can go to Saks Fifth Avenue to get a t-shirt. They're all very different experiences. Right. Sure. But they're still shirts. They're all shirts. So I think of that with with flowers for me, the same thing. It's like my friends that I talk to in the business, we all just have different approaches of how we present the flowers. And our clients are buying the flowers based on the experience they get within our store. I'm not a great fit for everybody. There's people like a different approach. And that's okay. So my friends that I talk to in the business, that we kind of chat about like, hey, how'd you get this? And how much was this? And where'd you pick this up from? And do you have an extra designer for this? Do you have a rental item on this? Have you seen this container? Can I borrow these containers? We talk about all these things because at the end of the day, we might all go after a similar job, but whoever gets it, it's usually it's not a price thing. It's a personality thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it is a price thing, it means that someone's pricing it incorrectly. Because I will say that we do have that. I will say there is definitely people in LA that I'm like, if you don't change your prices, you're not going to be in business very long. Just undercutting bids drives me crazy because we all know how much the flowers are. And quite frankly, right now with COVID, they're not getting cheaper; they're getting more expensive.
Right.
So we all need to be very aware and honest about how we're pricing things, because otherwise you're just not going to stay in business. But we all talk about those kind of things. And I love those conversations because they're real conversations. Holly and I, that's how we met, was we had like this round table of florists, and we had like a budgeting meeting and how do you mark things up? Like, what's the right markup, and you want to make sure that you learn all that information. Right. So now 22 years later, it's like, I want to know like what my friends, colleagues, competitors, like, you guys still charging this much for strike? Are you still, how much is your designers asking for per hour? Like, you don't want to get caught in a place where your designers are asking for $60 an hour and someone's saying yes, and another person's saying no or something, and you're like, wait, why would you do that to me? Or do that to us. Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So, so I think it's important to have that open conversation. And if you're nervous about having that conversation with your competitors, I think you're just going to get yourself in more trouble, or you're just going to bury yourself into a corner by yourself. And that's just not a good place to be in business. Like, communicate, ask questions, learn things, I think is a big part of what we do. That's how I feel I've grown, asking questions.
Well, and I think too, when you're in a smaller group of people that you trust and you feel comfortable with, and you can have those kinds of conversations, it makes so much sense. And I know people listening are going to want me to say, well, how do you mark up your flowers? But the cost of goods is so different for everybody, depending on your business, your location, your labor, all these different things. So what you
For sure. And that's a big difference. I will get people, not to cut you off, but I will get people to say, so-and-so is going to give it to me for this price. And I'm like, well, they have zero overhead. They're working out of a warehouse. I'm in a retail store. I have full staff who get, medical benefits, 401k. There's like so many parts to this. So yeah, again, goes back to the t-shirt thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
There's a reason why one's more expensive than the other.
That's exactly right. Well, Amy, thank you so much for this time. I have learned so much, and it's been such a pleasure to chat with you today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed talking. I could talk and talk and talk about this kind of stuff all the time. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.